Hey beautiful people, thank you for taking some time stopping by my channel. Today I have the exciting video of the best books that I read in 2022. These are the top fiction and classics that I read for the year. I did read 122 books total. That includes the nonfiction, which I did my top nonfiction in a separate video, which I can link below if you are also interested in nonfiction. But these are the top 10 fiction books. So starting at number 10, I am giving it to The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know this is kind of one of those books that it feels like it's been either a love or hate between people, but this is a definite love for me. It is a story where at the end of life, there is a library with every single possibility of life. And by opening it up and reading, she could relive those choices and experience kind of the path not chosen. And I understand there's some plot holes or there's some things that are a little, far-fetched, that kind of stuff, but I'm there for it. I love that kind of multi-dimensional time travel, other choice kind of trope. So if you know other books that you think have been done really well like that, leave me a comment. This makes my number 10. Really enjoyed it. Recommended if that sounds like an interesting premise to you. Number 9, I'm actually holding up 2 books, but they're in a series. I read Thunderhead and then The Toll. This is books 2 and 3 in a trilogy by Neil Shusterman, and it is his Scythe series. This is a story set in the future where death itself has been overcome. People no longer die. Like, even if they get run over by a bus, y'all, they can go to a resurrection center and be put back together. It's an amazing, amazing reality that we have created in the future. But the downfall is the overpopulation, because we can still breed and keep producing. So the Scythe have to go along and decide who's going to go, and they have different morals and values, and what does that look like, and who gets to judge that, and when you need to take out a Scyther, or when you're going to pick who's going to be one, how do you do that? So just the moral dilemmas, and there's so much adventure going on as far as action going on and traveling around, and again looking at different realities and different ethical questions. Just thought it was really well done, really well written, really entertaining. Lots of conversations and thoughts that were provoked by it. So this series coming in at number 9 for me this year. Incidentally, Scythe did make my top 10 the previous year when I first started that series. Number 8. I am going to give it to The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. This is actually the third, I think it's the third. Yeah, this is the third in the Wheel of Time books, and I just think they have gotten better and better. I enjoyed the first one, Eye of the World. I really liked The Great Hunt even better than this one. Has been my favorite so far. It is a fantasy epic that, if you haven't seen the TV show or don't know anything about it, basically it is the wheel turns and there are souls that are kind of recreated throughout time. There are different levels of races and species that are born. There are guardians and magic systems, and there is like a physical realm, and then there is a shadow realm. And so you have all these different things. Women are particularly controlling the magic and the dynamics of the politics and some of those things going on. It's one of those things that, because it's so complex, the first parts of the books and the first parts of the series are going to be a little slow going, a little, really packed with information. You have to kind of get through all that. But once you do, by the second book, it is tons of journeying and traveling and adventuring. And then this book just really took off. And so I'm just really, really invested in the stories, into the characters. I think Robert Jordan does a pretty good job of even having us kind of love the villains in the book. So totally good series so far. Putting it in at number 8. Number 7 is Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is the only one of hers that I have read so far. I look forward to reading more of hers. This is a fictional depiction of the life of William Shakespeare's family and the particular death of one of his twin sons, Hamlet, who most likely perished from the plague. And so this is drawing out the storylines and kind of giving backstories to not only the present day with Hamlet, but going back and looking at the courtship between William Shakespeare and his wife, and looking at theater and the Globe, and just dealing with those things in a beautifully artistic, artsy, almost poetic writing style kind of way. So I just enjoyed this even more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. I did read Hamlet right before I read it. That was a wise choice. So my only other caveat would be, if you want to pick this up, you haven't read it yet, I would audio listen to, watch a TV production of, or read Hamlet first, because I thought that added just an extra level of meaning and drama to reading this book. Moving up my chart, number 6 is kind of one that I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say. The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. So Hardy and I have a very interesting relationship. If you ask me for my least favorite classics of all time, definitely in the top 5, maybe even the top 1, would probably be Tess of the Uverbills. I do not like it. I do not like the dark, pessimistic, character, angsty, classical style of that book, which most of his books are. But this book somehow takes the action just to a place that is so entertaining and so well done. I loved it. Basically, we start out with a family where the dad is kind of the grouchy Scrooge-esque kind of character, and he ends up bickering with his wife and basically selling his wife and daughter to somebody in a bar while he's drinking and in a foul mood. And of course, you cannot really do this, even in, Thomas Hardy's world. But then the ramifications of this, and things are you have to suspend your disbelief, and you have to realize that in that proper society, even speaking ill of somebody is just way more problematic than it is here. If you certainly make moves on somebody, you're pretty much married to them, those kind of situations. And I did want to just even read the first paragraph to see if maybe you appreciate the writing, because in all of my love-hate with Thomas Hardy, his writing is a huge love. I love the way he writes. Just listen to it, just a couple lines. One evening of late summer, before the present century had reached its 30th year, a young man and woman, the latter carrying a child, were approaching the large village of Weighton Priors on foot. They were plainly, but not ill-clad, though the thick ore of dust which had accumulated on their shoes and garments from an obviously long journey lent a disadvantaged shabbiness to their appearance just now. It's like he doesn't say anything, just like they didn't have on proper clothes, or this is when the time is, or this is what their name is. He talks about it like circular speak is what I call it. And I love it. I love it. I love the way he talks, and just at first he'll say a sentence and I'll be like, what? Oh, okay. And then I just find that very engaging and fun. So anyway, if any of that sounds at all interesting, this one is not excessively long. It was fun. I liked it. Number 5, Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. I buddy read this with Shelley Swearingen, and I think she struggled with the fact that this is a very emotional, kind of dark story. It is a historical fiction, so part of the angst of it is that that these things actually happened similarly, even though this is fictitious and these exact things didn't happen, but you get the point. So it is based around a boarding school that really did exist, that also dealt with segregated areas where the whites and blacks were not treated equally, where there was a lot of over corporal punishment, and even to the point of death of some of the students, dealing with just the issues of, the politics of, again, that value of life, right? It's like, where does that come in and step in, and when do we say this is worth the effort that it takes and the messiness that it takes to deal with it? And the reason why I loved this story in particular, because I do feel like there's quite a few stories like this out there, but the one way that this one works so well for me is the relationship of these two boys, Elwood and Turner, and they just had this friendship and this loyalty in the midst of all of this trouble and heartache. And they were flawed, they had their own issues, but they were committed to, the bigger picture and to the friendship itself. And that kind of journey and that kind of struggle and passion just really shines through in this. And there is, a lot of the plot twists and things like that I just really appreciated. And so I absolutely am here for it. Thought this was one of my very favorite, most, thought-provoking books that I read this year. Number 4 isn't too far away from the same themes of Kindred by Octavia Butler. This, of course, has been getting rave reviews for quite some time. I'm a little bit late to the party, but this is dealing with a woman who is in modern times, who basically gets sucked back into time, to a time period where there is a white boy who is always in danger, that she, being a black woman, can somehow help. But of course, being back in time, there are slavery, plantations, things of this nature going on that are threatening to her. So by going back and helping, she herself becomes in danger. And just the ethical dilemmas, the working out even what's going on, why is this happening, what choices could be made, and then what choices are these characters making. How is that maybe like things that are still going on or that we still wrestle with today? And I just like that kind of time travel and philosophical, thought-provoking kind of book. This is done really well. I'm looking forward to reading more of her in the future, and just really feel like I discovered a new author that I can really resonate with and explore more of her work. So, number 3 may or may not be a surprise, because it's been a while since this one hit the top for me, because I read it in January, but it has stuck and it has made it, and here it is, Middlemarch by George Eliot. So this is a new classical favorite for me, yay! So this book, if you're not familiar, George Eliot was a woman writer who was pushing those boundaries, being a female author to begin with, and was writing some stronger female characters, was writing some different angles of the classic relationship tropes, because in my humble opinion, the classics are of that mindset where relationships predominantly were about not property, but basically estates and lineage and properness and what do you get from the marriage, all those kind of things, right? That was way more important than the romance side, or, some of those things that we consider more now. But this book didn't necessarily go along with that, even though in the end it has, to me, satisfying endings. It wasn't always happy-go-lucky. Things didn't always work out the way I felt like they normally kind of typically go. So I was very engaged. I was very invested. It is a big book. It is different storylines, different relationships, people kind of ill-fated, people that are supposed to be together, that are struggling to get together, people who, are put together, but they really should not be put together. And what kind of mayhem does that cause and fallout? So it is very slow paced in that it's about society, it's about relationships, it's about properness. But when I'm in that mood, this is definitely the top one that I've read so far in that kind of Victorian, modern, or classical style of writing. So that's number 3. Number 2, favorite book for 2022, I'm giving to Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary, another book that has gotten a lot of positive reviews by a lot of people, and for good reason. I will start and say a lot of the negative reviews of this is the strong science aspect, because this is a story of a man who wakes up, takes a while to figure out who he is and where he is, to remember his bearings, because he's basically on a spaceship in outer space, and it's a mission, you know, Hail Mary, trying to save the universe kind of thing. And so he is very scientific, very mathematical, very got to figure it out. I remember the story, like the writers who would write Star Trek, and they would write out the characters and the action and the script, and then they would put this little quote, add the scientific jargon. Like, they didn't have to come up with that. They would say, add that scientific jargon. And so I felt like this was maybe that writer, although I know Andy Weir wrote his own scientific jargon, but you get the idea. There was a lot of scientific jargon in it. And sometimes even I, who actually appreciate and love the scientific jargon, was like, can we just get on with the story? I don't need, this is too much scientific stuff. So even I give you that. But despite that, I'm still going back and saying, upon thinking and dwelling, and the other thing that really gets me personally in this story is that it encounters out there in life in space, like Star Trek, out there in space. How do you deal with other species, other life forms in space? What are the protocols and the ethics and the relationships, and how does that go down? Because I'm actually married to a man who's very interested in that, watches and reads a ton up on alien life and life on other universes and planets. And so this allowed me to have a different flavor of conversation with him, if you will, like, hey, that's like the book I'm reading, this is their theory, or this is what they said, and it actually made great dinner conversation. So I'm just saying, if you have somebody in your life that is interested in that, this may be a good buddy read or a good gift for them if they're a reader. And number 1 favorite top book that I'm going to give to 2022 is Blake Crouch's Dark Matter. This was the book that I chose for one of my major vacations for the year and took on vacation. And that may be part of the reason why it ends up at number 1, but I don't care. I'm putting it up there because I'm going to recommend it, that if you're in particular going on vacation, and if you like the multiverse, that whole kind of warp of, you know, traveling wormholes, alternate realities, this is a fun book. So this is basically the story of a gentleman who is into the kind of scientific realm of exploration of these kind of things. Is it possible to participate in some of this stuff? You know, there is a not a time machine, but a box that basically is the experimental box that is dealing with some of this dark matter kind of issues. And so things happen, things go down, and then he's on an adventure to try to set the universe correct. Because if you think about all those kind of butterfly effect kind of things, if you've ever dealt in any of those kind of stories, you understand that if you set off one little ripple here, it's going to change all of reality, and that could be a really big deal, right? So this book is totally my jam. My favorite movie, by the way, was the Spider-Man with the multiverse. Love the multiverse. If you have a favorite multiverse book, drop it below. I want to know. But this is the most entertaining, the thing that I have kind of referred to multiple times, recommended this book multiple times. Totally, it may not be the highest. I mean, if you pit it against classics of all time, I'm not saying his writing is forever classic level writing, but as far as It's well written. You can understand the story. You can follow along. You get engaged with the characters. You can picture the settings in your head. You have a lot of philosophical thoughts and engagement. This is it, y'all. Those are my top 10 picks for 2022. I think I had a fantastic reading year. 122 books. That's worthy. Those are the top ones. Leave me a comment if you've read any of these. If you want to read any of those, I would love to know. I hope that you have great reading and picks wherever you are. Happy New Year, y'all. Take care.